The 2012 NFL Draft, you were picked in the fifth round by the Indianapolis Colts. What do you remember the most about that day and moment?
Oh man. So I felt like I wasn't going to get drafted because, like, I was thinking, okay, at on the high side, I was thinking third round. You know, sometimes it be guys who I don't know, they might think fifth round, but they get drafted in the first or second. You just never know. But I was thinking realistically, maybe third round, on the low side, fifth round. So when it got to the fifth round, I'm like, okay, and I still haven't had my name called, and then St. Louis called me. And they were like, we still have you on our board, but in the case that we don't draft you, we still want you as a free agent. So that was a pretty discouraging call for me at the time because being drafted is like, it means a little bit, but not much. So like I said, they called me and they hung up. And at this point, I'm like, man, I got all my family, it's all my friends, and you know, I want to share this moment with them. Receiving that phone call and getting drafted, and I'm thinking that it probably won't happen. And maybe like 20 minutes after that call, right now it's getting to the end of the fifth round. I'm like, man, I was thinking to myself, from 3 to 5, and I'm at the end of 5. I still haven't got a call, and then my phone rings, and I told my cousin, I was like, man, answer the phone for me because I was over it. I'm like, man, I'm about to enjoy my family and friends. Like, if somebody called me, they call, but if not, whatever, I'm gonna still enjoy them. So he was like, you sure you want me to answer it? He was like, I think you might want to grab it. So I grabbed it and answered, and it was this woman on the phone. She was like, is this Vick Ballard? I was like, yes. And she was like, can I put you on hold? And I was like, yeah, that's cool. So um after I was taken off hold, I think I was on like they put me on speaker, and I can't remember exactly who it was. I want to say it was Coach Pagano. He asked me, like how does it, like, oh, would I like to be a coach or something like that? I was like, of course,
You're like,
of
let me think
course,
about that, coach.
yeah. Would I like to be a coach? And that was, that's how I went. And a couple minutes later, my position coach called. So I guess I was able to relax a little bit and get ready to be a coach.
Emotionally for you, just given what you had gone through before with again, we're going back to the lack of notoriety or the lack of love, so to speak. From an emotional perspective, did it just feel like finally, or was it kind of that same mentality of, all right, this is awesome, my hard work has paid off, and now we got to continue working on those small details?
It was kind of both. It was kind of like finally, but and also like, dang, like how did I slip this far back? And I probably didn't slip back. That's probably just where I was, where I was rated. But like, relatively speaking, because at this time, like I said, I'm getting drafted, but also I'm thinking about all the guys who, like those 12 guys that was on that 12 most wanted list, right? From high school. Like, none of them got drafted. And it's like, okay, like, whoever came out with that article was obviously wrong about me. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, so I got a little satisfaction from that. Nothing against them. Like, I love them guys. I still talk to them to this day. It's like I felt a little bit of satisfaction from that, but I also felt like, man, I should have been drafted higher because I felt like my stats were comparable, and my level of play was comparable to some of the guys that got drafted ahead of me, or rated ahead of me the whole draft. And so I feel like like as a running back, I feel like I have a pretty good beat on good running back talent because I play the position. It's what at the time, that's what I was living and breathing every day. And a lot of times, like, you have like GMs and scouts, the one, like, these people are kind of analyzing these different players and giving them ratings. And sometimes I felt like they didn't know what they were talking about. So like I said, in my mind, it was only two people who I felt like were better than me and coming out with me. It was Doug Martin and Trent Richardson. Anybody else? And I was like, nah, I'm just as good as them. I'm just as good as them. But Doug Martin and Trent Richardson, I was like, okay, if they get drafted ahead of me, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Do you think in some ways it's almost like an endless trap? You think about, you get drafted to the NFL. Just if you think about that singularly, take out where you got drafted, that's, you're doing something that millions of people will never have the opportunity to do, or just maybe can't do from an athletic perspective. So in some ways you kind of see it as like an endless trap because you get picked, but then it's almost like the mind, and I'm just using football as merely an example here. It's almost like the mind picks up like, cool, you got drafted, but no, you were drafted in the 5th round and all these other guys were taken before you. And why were they taken before you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's just the competitive nature of athletes or anybody in general. You know, if you're a competitor, you look at your place, you know, and whatever that hierarchy is, you know, is relative, but you look at your places like, man, you know, I'm better than that person. So like you feel some type of way about it. And that's pretty much how I felt because I don't know, a little bit of it was probably ego as well. Cause like I said, I felt like I should have been ranked a little bit higher, but you know, like I said, you know, now that after I got drafted and after I got with the team, I started seeing it was like, okay, drafted or undrafted, it really doesn't matter. I think the big difference was, I mean, obviously the amount of signing bonus you got, especially if you were drafted in the later rounds. I would say if you got drafted in the first or second round, I think it really means something. But you know, the rounds that came after that, it's like you might get an opportunity first, but eventually they're gonna play the best person. So if you're the best person at that position, you know, that's just you're gonna play.
I mean, that makes complete sense just in terms of financially from the first 2 rounds and everything after that. Like, I guess I think that's the point that I forget sometimes, where it's like, wait a second, you got drafted, cool, but then you think, okay, well, the monetary compensation involved, and do I have a spot on this roster, and all the other things that come into play.
Yeah, yeah. The biggest thing is just getting the spot on the roster, as you mentioned, and you know, after that, just work hard, and eventually, like I said earlier, man, the cream rise to the top. So, yeah.
Vic, what do you remember about October 28th, 2012?
A lot of people refer back to that play when they think of me. You know what I'm saying? So, but I was just out there balling. I think that was I want to say my first or second game starting. So I really wasn't, you know, thinking too much of it. I was just trying to seize the opportunity at hand. I remember that game also. It was kind of one of the first games I started to feel comfortable with the system because I struggled, you know, I was struggling. And yeah, it was actually early in the game I had fumbled. And you know, as a running back, that's one of the, you know, cardinal sins, you know, you can't fumble. And we didn't lose it because we got lucky. On the play that I fumbled, somebody jumped offside, so the play was dead, so they didn't get the ball. But still, it was a fumble. It was a fumble, you know, on my resume. But you know, luckily I was able to make it up with that play. So
And that wasn't just any ordinary touchdown. It was your first career NFL touchdown, and it happened in overtime against the Tennessee Titans. Where, Vic, when I watched that video, it looks like you jump like 10 yards to kind of corkscrew into the end zone. And like I look it back and they're slowing it down. I'm like, how the heck did this guy do that?
yeah, it was I remember it like everything I was thinking and everything. Actually, man, I'm gonna just go through the whole spiel because I don't know. So but that play that we ran, it was a play that BA kind of drew up in the dirt, and BA is Bruce Arians. So he's just kind of actually he said I think he saw Virginia Tech run something similar that prior week when they were playing. And he came in and we didn't even have a legit name for it. We just called it like old football player or some BS like that. And we ran it one time in practice. It was like, oh, it worked in practice. And we never ran it again. We never ran it again. And so now it's overtime. And you know, Luck come in, you know, Luck say, oh, we're running that play from practice. You know, he called it by his name. Everybody looking at each other like, are you serious? We only ran that one time? We're gonna run it in overtime when we're in the red zone. So if you go back and look at the play, like each individual position, like it was a disaster. Like nobody did their job. And it almost didn't work. But you know, Luck got me the ball and I'm running. And I see that I'm probably not gonna make it to the end zone, you know, on my 2 feet. And it was this guy coming in, and I was like, it was one guy kind of chasing me from behind or something like that. And I knew I could probably beat him. And there was another guy, he was like coming kind of you know, adjacent to me or whatever. And I was like, okay, I think he's gonna try to push me out of bounds. So I jumped. And I think if you go back to the video, I think he did try to push me out of bounds. And when I jumped, he kind of grazed me, and that's what turned me over. So at that point, you know, I was at the at the disposal of gravity. And and whenever gravity did its thing, I came down on top of the pylon. So that's pretty much the story behind it.
So cool, man. I love you taking us through like that exact moment in time, because it happens in a split second. It's really cool when you can kind of slow it down for us and take us back. After all these years, you could take us back, step by step.
It was the first one, so you definitely gonna remember that first one.
Your first season with the Colts, 966 total yards, 3 total touchdowns. You guys went to the playoffs, ultimately losing to the Ravens in the wild card game. From there, the injuries started to pile up. In terms of that first season of work in the NFL, like mind, body, and soul, like what was that like for you having that success?
It was like, okay, like when you start talking about like feeling validated, I definitely felt validated at that point because it was nothing else to like. At that point, I didn't feel like I'm at the highest level, and I'm playing at a high level at the highest level. Like, what else do I have to prove? It's like, okay, I'm one of the best. So I ended the season feeling like, man, I can do this for a long time. You know what I'm saying? It got easy to me, especially that last game, that Baltimore game. I felt like that was probably one of my best games. I mean, like statistically speaking, it wasn't like a great game, but as far as like, doing my assignments, my blocking assignments, like not making mistakes, just everything. Like I said, I remember I had 10 blocking assignments and I was 10 for 10 on them. And I had a decent game running the ball also. I had like 20 carries for like 90 some yards against the Super Bowl, winners, the eventual Super Bowl winners. So I was like, that's a decent game for a running back. I didn't score any touchdowns, but if I would have scored a touchdown, it just would have been icing on top of the cake. But I said, so at this point, I'm like, yes, like I can do this. Like it's no question in my mind. Like anybody that's ever questioned me in the past, like here you go. Like this is the proof right here. And so that was definitely the top of the mountain for me. But and like I said, I felt validated, but those next couple of years got a little rough. Next couple of years they came got a little rough, man. So I had to face a whole new journey.
Yeah, and so that's the thing that I'm so curious about, Vic, is you get that validation, and I love that you use that word, and then all of a sudden the injuries start to pile up. You tore your ACL in 2013, and then 10 months later, after the ACL injury, you tore your Achilles. When you think about the back-to-back devastating injuries you sustained, what do those setbacks represent for you today?
Like I said, like I alluded to earlier, it's like whenever you going through something, um, you don't see the end of it, especially when it's a dark time. That was definitely a dark time for me. And you also said something else, like things might not work out the way you wanted to, but they work out in your favor ultimately if you put in the time and effort or whatever. So to me, that's those times were a time where I definitely learned a lot about myself. It was my first time really stepping away from football, so I was able to ask myself some pretty tough questions because a lot of football players they identify with like they identify with what they do. It's like, oh, like I'm a football player. It's like, you're not a football player. You're a person that plays football. So like coming to that realization for myself, I had to figure out who was I when I wasn't playing football. And like I say, that time away definitely enabled me to do that. And that's how, I'm pretty like the person who I am today. I probably wouldn't have been this person I am today without those injuries. And I mean that in a good way, you know what I'm saying? Because I was able to like learn a lot about myself and, practice that perseverance and just all these different things that people talk about whenever you hit hard times. So I was able to prove to myself, it's like, yes, like I can go tough things and not quit. So I think that's what that's what they mean to me.
I love that. Kellen Clemens talked about not having your identity wrapped up in football, and he said that Chad Pennington is the one who gave him that message. And he said that was probably one of the most important things that he learned during his time in the NFL. Because, like you said, it's super easy to think that's who you are, and then something happens, you get injured or you retire or just life happens, and then what? And then you have to kind of figure out, unravel that if you choose. Because why did you choose to investigate that and not just put that off until after your football career? Or did you feel like you didn't have a choice because you were sidelined back to back?
I didn't have a choice, man. That's 2 years worth of, you know, sitting with your thoughts. You know, you can't run from your thoughts. You can run from a lot of stuff, but your thoughts are with you 24/7 unless you sleep. And sometimes they with you even in your sleep, even in your dreams. So I had to confront it. You know, I had to walk into it, and I knew that was the only way to get through it was confronting it. And it was tough, you know, but eventually I felt like I got the answers I needed. And like I say, here I am today. I mean, it wasn't like a effort completely, like a complete individual effort. Obviously, I had to kind of reach out to people that was in my circle. I got into reading around that time. Like I read a lot of books, and it definitely gave me clarity. Because it's like sometimes you don't. It's like you don't know what you don't know, and there are thoughts that you just can't think because you're not exposed to the information. And like I say, books and my circle of influence, they definitely helped me kind of not really guide me because it's like I like to feel like I chose who I am, based off how I feel. But they kind of like they gave me the tools to become my own person.
Well, heck yeah, man. I mean, you chose the path of, hey, like I'm gonna figure this out. And then I think once you make a choice, then your circle comes in, and then they can help guide you once you've ultimately made um, that decision for yourself. I saw on your Instagram page that you have a lot of pictures of books and quotes highlighted. What did you read during that time? What are you reading today? And like, what's the meaning behind all the stuff that you post?
Man, I mean, the meaning is however it hits your brain, that's what it's supposed to mean. Like if you read it, I know for me, it probably like some quotes I'll read it and it mean one thing today, but all right, read it again tomorrow, it means something different, you know. But back then, I was reading a lot of like I guess they would call it self help. A lot of just a lot, man. Like remember the first book I read was I think it was called Strength of a Champion. It was this guy, I can't think of his name. OJ Brigance, I want to say. He played for Baltimore back in the day and was diagnosed with ALS. So I think that was the first book I read because like here's this guy facing these crazy challenges, and he don't even have body function anymore. Like he couldn't get around on his own on his own. So it kind of put stuff in perspective for me. And he talked about a lot of people I knew also. So it's like, man, it just kind of it was a nice book to read. And from there, I just went crazy with the books, man. I read read this, I mean, like a lot of people, they read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that book was definitely pivotal in my life because like many athletes, they don't know what to do with their money. And that book kind of gave me my initial like thrust into financial literacy. I read the most favorite book I read, and I like to say probably the most influential book was a book called Road Less Traveled. And it's written by a guy named Scott Peck. He's a psychiatrist, and the book was written back in like the 50s or 60s or something like that. But I feel like the values and principles and things that he talks about still holds weight to this day. At the time, it definitely challenged my vocabulary, man, because I was having to read it with my phone open to like Google certain words to see what he was talking about to get the true meaning of what he was saying. But once I got it, I was like, man, that is so beautiful. Like I just felt like that book was a gift. Like it came to me at the right time, man, because that definitely gave me clarity in terms of a lot of things that I was struggling with. But from there, man, I just started stacking them up, man. Like I was trying to read anything I could get my hands on, just trying to get my knowledge up. And like I said, I'm thankful. And without those injuries, I probably wouldn't have ever picked any of those books up. So that's the silver lining of it.
That's so cool, man. I love it when you're going through a difficult time and then you happen to dive into some reading and then you end up picking up like one or two books, maybe right off the top, that just resonate, just maybe hit on a lot of the thoughts that are running through your mind. I mean, it's interesting how that works out sometimes, because I've done the same thing. I'll get recommended a book. Like I got recommended this book called The Midnight Library, and it was recommended by a mentor of mine. And there's this quote, you can choose choices, but not outcomes. And for whatever reason, that just like opened up my entire world. Like I wish I could tell you why, but I really don't have like a tangible um explanation for it. It's crazy.
I understand completely, man. It's like, you get that. It's like I always tell my buddies, man, the reason why I love books is because you can read one sentence that will change your complete perspective on life. It's like that potential. And it sounds like that's what that kind of happened for you. It's like you read one sentence and it completely like change the way you change your approach to life.
Yeah, like it's just one of those things where you never think that could happen. Then you decide to take, because that's such a reading is a huge tool, whether it's a self-help book or a book about somebody who's going through something and it's persevered. I think regardless if you're open to it, it can really kind of give you some perspective and context about your life.
Exactly, man. I love it, man. Like I said, I don't read as much today, but I do still dabble. And I shouldn't say dabble. I'm just not as frequent as I used to. And like I love like actual hard books. And I was like anti-audiobook because I like to like read and like highlight, man. But now I'm like my schedule doesn't really permit me to, sit down and like actually take the time out to read like a hard copy. So I've been into the audiobooks lately. So
What was it like playing with Andrew Luck?
it was great, man. Man, I got so much respect for Luck, not just as a football player, I think more as a person than a football player. So he's just one of those guys. A lot of people don't know him personally; they just know what they see in the media. But he's one of the most genuine people you'll ever meet, man. When I was going through my situation, Andrew Luck's a big reader as well. You would always see his face in the book. And when I think I tore my ACL, he gave me a book called Unbroken. Um, I forget the character, but it's a true story. It's about this guy who was in a concentration camp for like, years. He was a prisoner of war. And basically talked about all the BS he had to put up with, but he was like, regardless, he didn't let any of that break his spirit. And eventually he came back home and even got the opportunity to like meet the guy who was like doing all this stuff to him. But the guy declined it, you know what I'm saying? It's like, but long story short, he didn't hold that bitterness in. But like I said, the story was about perseverance. And like just even thinking of me to like, give me that book, that says a lot about him as a person because nobody else on the team did. They tell you cliche stuff like, oh, it's gonna be okay, oh, just keep working hard. But it's like he actually like gave me a gift that said, look, like it's gonna be cool, you know what I'm saying? Like gave me something that represented perseverance. Um, and my locker was right next to his, so I got to see him a lot, talk to him a lot. Um, so yeah, he's like I said, great dude, man. I can't say enough about him.
That's really cool, man. That somebody, yeah, because it's easiest to say, yeah, dude, you'll be good. You're gonna rehab, you'll be fine. But how cool is that to get something else saying, hey, like read this, check this out. Like this might change your perspective, open up your eyes, give you some context. I mean, that is a beautiful thing, man.
Exactly. And at the time, it's crazy how everything kind of works because that's around the time I had just gotten into reading. And it's like I said, I wasn't a reader before that, but it's like I'm definitely, after that, I was definitely a reader and I read the book. And actually, it's crazy too because soon after the movie came out, it's a movie about it. It's like right after the movie came out, it had to be like 2013, 2014, the movie came out about it. So I went and watched the movie right after I finished the book. Just like everything kind of lined up. And I said it was definitely it was a beautiful story and a beautiful gesture by Luck, like you said.